There are things in this world that are simply too sacred to say out loud. Because once words are released, they're no longer just thoughts, they become energy. Words build things. They tear things down. They open doors, and they expose what's been hidden. And if you're someone who's walking a higher spiritual path, you've probably already felt this. When certain truths are spoken too freely, they don't just inform, they invite. They can stir energies that aren't always safe. In a culture obsessed with oversharing, silence can become your protection. It may not seem like much, but sometimes, not saying something is more powerful than shouting it from a mountaintop. You might not even realize it, but even hinting at certain truths can crack open spiritual doorways, and not all of what comes through is good. If you've ever felt a weird shift right after sharing something deep, or like unseen forces suddenly pushed back, well, now you know why. You're not just floating through life randomly. You've been set apart. Chosen for something greater. That weight you feel on your shoulders? That constant pull toward solitude? That quiet knowing that some things inside you aren't meant to be shared casually? That's not paranoia. It's spiritual discernment. And if you're still here, still listening, that tells me something. You already feel it. You know, deep down, that some secrets aren't meant to be told. Not because they aren't real, but because they're too real. Too sacred. Too powerful. So let's talk about 7 of these truths, the kind that can't be casually thrown into conversations. Each one is like a piece of armor in a world that doesn't always understand or respect what's holy. Let's start with the first. Not all wisdom is meant to be shared. Some revelations come like lightning, sudden, brilliant, divine. But not everyone is ready for that light. When you shine it in the eyes of the blind, they curse the glare. And your spiritual insights? They're not party tricks. They're not for entertaining or impressing people. They're like sacred scripts etched into your soul, designed to guide you, not gain followers. Sharing these insights recklessly is like handing a golden crown to someone who only sees how heavy it is. They won't cherish it. They might mock it. Or worse, twist it. Misunderstanding isn't the only danger. Distortion is. People might take something that was clear and holy for you and turn it into confusion. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes just because they weren't meant to hear it in the first place. There's an old teaching, do not cast your pearls before swine. Pearls aren't easy to make. They're formed through pressure, through pain. Why throw them in front of people who can't see their beauty or understand their value? You've probably felt it, that sting of being ignored or laughed at when you shared something deeply spiritual. That awkward silence when you opened your heart to someone who just didn't get it. Those moments aren't failures. They're lessons. They're your spirit telling you, next time, be more selective. A prophet doesn't speak for fun. And whether you know it or not, you've been trusted with messages. Not for everyone. For the mission. That's why spiritual discretion matters. You don't speak because someone asks. You speak when your soul says now. Those revelations you carry, they're like ancient keys. They're not meant to be tossed around in casual group chats or plastered all over social media. They're meant to sit quietly in your spirit until the right door shows up. Then, only then, you use them. And once you learn to protect what you've been shown, you start to see the next truth. Your wounds, just like your words, need protection. Walking a spiritual path doesn't just attract admiration. It attracts opposition, quiet, sneaky, spiritual resistance. And even the strongest souls have weak spots. That doesn't make you flawed. It makes you human. But when you expose those cracks to the wrong people, it invites more than judgment. It can invite spiritual interference. Because here's the thing, vulnerability is energy. It's not just emotional, it's spiritual. Every time you open up, you lower your defenses. But not everyone who listens is listening with love. Some people aren't safe spaces. Some people are collectors. They gather your fears, your doubts, your tears, not to help, but to use them later. They may not even realize they're doing it. Some are just spiritually immature. Others, more intentional. Either way, they drain you. The moment they sense a weakness, they feed off it. That's why discernment is everything. Not everyone is meant to witness your low moments. Not because they're bad people, but because they don't have the spiritual maturity to treat those moments with care. Your inner world isn't for public viewing. It's a sacred temple. And temples are guarded, not open 24/7 to whoever walks by. Being guarded doesn't mean being cold. It means being wise. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's placed in trustworthy hands. Shared recklessly, it becomes dangerous. Think about how ancient temples were built. Surrounded by walls. Protected night and day. Only the purified could enter. Your soul deserves that same kind of care. Your emotional struggles, your deepest truths, those aren't meant for mass consumption. They're meant for a chosen few, aligned not by convenience, but by spirit. Even Jesus understood this. In the Garden of Gethsemane, in his moment of deep sorrow, he didn't call the crowd. He brought just a few, and even they couldn't stay awake with him. That wasn't his failure. It was a lesson for us. Even the closest people might not be capable of holding space for your pain. So don't assume closeness equals safety. Time and silence reveal who's worthy of your truth. Let silence be your filter. Let people show you they're safe before you open your heart. Energetic openness in unsafe places doesn't just hurt emotionally, it leaves your spirit vulnerable. Sometimes, just saying your fears out loud in front of the wrong ears can give those fears more power. Words magnify what you speak. That's why it matters who's listening. Protect your truth. Guard your voice. And still, don't let this make you hard. Let it make you wise. Handle your vulnerability the way you'd hold a sacred scroll, gently, carefully, only when the time is right. Your cracks aren't a problem. They make you real. But when protected, they also make you unshakable. You're not called to bleed in front of strangers. You're called to heal in silence, grow in strength, and speak only when your voice comes from wholeness. Every soul gives off a frequency, and yours, because of your spiritual calling, vibrates differently. You've probably noticed it. People feel your presence before you even say a word. It's not about charm. It's not even about charisma. It's presence, and presence is power. But here's the danger. Power that isn't protected becomes prey. When you're walking a sacred path, your energy draws people, not just the ones looking for light, but also the ones who want to take it for themselves. Some come with open hearts. Others come with empty hands and hungry spirits. And the difference between the two? It's not always obvious. It could be the friend who always shares their struggles but never stays to listen to yours. The coworker who asks for your advice, only to ignore it. The spiritual seeker who praises your insight but drains your energy every time you speak. These aren't just one-off moments. These are patterns. You give your time, your presence, your peace, and all they leave you with is fatigue and confusion. You tell yourself you're just being helpful, just being kind, living your purpose. But helping without discernment? That's not kindness, it's self-abandonment. Over time, the cracks start to show. Not because you're weak, but because you've been pouring into people who were never meant to receive from you. Let's be real, spiritual parasites exist. And no, they're not monsters hiding in the shadows. They're people with unresolved wounds, spiritual dullness, or silent envy. They're drawn to your light, not because they honor it, but because they subconsciously want to consume it. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling spiritually tired, emotionally scattered, mentally foggy, that wasn't just a mood. That was your spirit trying to send a signal. These aren't coincidences. They're warnings. This person is withdrawing from your soul, not depositing into it. You were not called to be a well for every thirsty soul. Even Jesus, who had limitless power, didn't pour himself out for every person who asked. He withdrew. He rested. He chose where to give. That's not selfish. That's wisdom. That's spiritual strategy. When your energy starts coming from depletion instead of overflow, you're in dangerous territory. That's when burnout creeps in. That's when you start losing your clarity, your joy, even your sense of calling. So here's your permission: say no. Set boundaries without guilt. Protect your time, your mind, your peace. The people who love you will understand. The ones who don't, they were only ever there to consume. You cannot feed everyone. If you try, you'll starve yourself. And a starving spirit cannot carry divine assignments. So be vigilant. Watch for the signs. When something feels off, step back. Sometimes, silence is your answer. Sometimes, distance is your defense. You are not here to explain your boundaries to everyone. You're here to protect your light, not out of fear, but because it was never meant to burn for just anyone. Let it shine where it's honored, not where it's harvested. Some people speak with confidence. Others walk into a room, and the whole energy shifts. If you've ever noticed silence when you enter, eyes following you, emotions shifting without any clear reason, that's not imagination. That's spiritual resonance. Your presence carries weight. It stirs something. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. And sometimes, what it stirs isn't always comfortable. Your energy can provoke just by existing. It can awaken. It can heal. But it can also unsettle. Because your presence isn't just your body. It's your frequency. It's the unseen echo of your spirit moving through the world. And that is why you have to protect it. Presence is influence. And influence, when left unguarded, becomes a target. Some will admire you. Others will resent you. Some will celebrate you. Others will silently compete, envy, or reject you. You won't always hear it, but you'll feel it. A weird tension in the air. A heaviness in a room. A strange shift in someone's tone. These are spiritual indicators. They tell you, you've been noticed. But not everyone is responding with love. Your presence disrupts. And disruption can lead to transformation or resistance. That's why you can't just walk into any space. That's not arrogance. That's self-preservation. Some rooms carry spiritual residue. Gossip, jealousy, confusion, they cling to sensitive souls. You might walk in peaceful and leave completely drained. That's not drama. That's spiritual reality. Where you go, your spirit goes. And where your spirit lands, it either flourishes or fades. You're not called to every room. You're called to the right rooms. The ones that honor you. The ones that don't resist you. Choose wisely. And when the world gets loud, too loud, don't be afraid to withdraw. Solitude isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's sacred. All great spiritual leaders withdrew. Not to run, but to refocus. To breathe. To realign. You need to do the same. When the world pulls at your energy, your voice, your identity, step back. Solitude helps your spirit detox. It gives your presence a chance to reset. In quiet, you remember who you are. In stillness, you gather strength. You don't owe everyone your company. Presence is a gift. It's sacred. It's not something to be given thoughtlessly. Where you show up, who you allow near, these are sacred choices. Treat your presence like the sacred thing it is. Because when you start honoring it, others will too. When you walk with the awareness that even your silence speaks, you stop trying to prove your worth. You stop stepping into places that require you to perform just to be seen. In a world obsessed with noise, opinions, comments, debates, silence becomes an act of rebellion. Not weakness. Mastery. Your silence says, I don't need to argue. I don't need to explain. I know who I am. You don't have to respond to every accusation. You don't have to defend every choice. You don't owe your truth to every curious ear. Remember how Jesus responded to his accusers with silence. Not because he lacked truth, but because truth doesn't argue with ignorance. His silence was a mirror. And yours can be, too. Silence is power. It hides you when visibility would only bring harm. It shields your energy. It becomes a sanctuary. In quiet, you hear things the world drowns out. Discernment sharpens. Wisdom deepens. Revelation flows. Silence is the language of the sacred. When you choose stillness, you tune your spirit to the frequency of heaven. You stop reacting. You start receiving. And when you finally speak, after being silent, the world listens. Not because you shouted, but because you spoke from a place of real authority. Discretion is not secrecy born from fear, it's wisdom born from reverence. As someone walking a sacred path, not everything in your life is meant for public display. The world will tell you that to be seen is to be validated, that to constantly share is to prove you're living with purpose. But spiritual maturity whispers something entirely different. What is sacred must be protected. Your journey, your revelations, the divine messages you've received, these aren't for public consumption. They're the blueprint of your purpose. And you don't show a blueprint mid-construction. Every time you expose a divine insight too early, you risk interference. Words spoken in excitement can land in ears not ready or not worthy to hear them. Not everyone who listens is malicious. But even the well-meaning can bring doubt, fear, or envy into your sacred space. And those energies can disrupt what's being built in you. Imagine your spiritual progress as a flame, small and flickering at first. It doesn't need an audience. It needs shelter. Exposing it too soon to wind, opinions, expectations, judgment, can extinguish it before it has a chance to become light. Your dreams don't need spotlights. They need soil. Your revelations don't need retweets. They need roots. Even in your relationships, discretion matters. Some bonds are divine. But even divine connections sometimes need to flourish in silence. Broadcast every bond, every idea, every goal too soon, and you expose them to not just people, but spiritual forces that don't want to see them succeed. The spiritual realm listens, too. And the moment something sacred is announced prematurely, it can attract resistance. That's why the wise move quietly. They build privately. They let the fruit speak, not the seed. And when the right time comes, the world doesn't need an explanation, because the outcome speaks for itself. Holiness isn't just found in your prayers. It lives in your boundaries. When you treat your calling, your insights, your relationships as sacred, the world learns how to treat them too. Discretion creates a spiritual force field. It protects your mission, your anointing, your next step. In stillness, you preserve your power. In quiet, you deepen your roots. And when you finally move or speak, it's not noise, it's impact. Because what has been nurtured in the dark will always shine brighter when revealed in the light. Spiritual power without emotional control, however, is like putting a sword in the hands of a child, dangerous, unpredictable, and more harmful than helpful. You can be anointed and still out of alignment. The path of the chosen doesn't just demand insight or gifting, it demands mastery of your inner world. Emotions are powerful, but they are not meant to lead. Left unchecked, they can hijack clarity, distort discernment, and delay divine timing. They're not the enemy, but they're also not the compass. To truly walk in your calling, you have to become the observer of your emotions, not the prisoner of them. Ask yourself, what's behind this anger? What's beneath this fear? What belief is this emotion exposing? The reaction is rarely the root, it's the fruit. If you trace the emotion, you'll often find an unmet need, a broken expectation, or an illusion of control slipping away. When you gain awareness, you gain power. Emotion stops being a flood and becomes a current you can ride with wisdom. Even history reminds us of the cost of emotional disobedience. Moses, deeply favored by God, lost his entry into the promised land because of one emotional misstep. Instead of speaking to the rock in faith, he struck it in frustration. A single act, driven by emotion, detoured a divine promise. That wasn't just a punishment, it was a lesson. Even the chosen must master their impulses. Because power without surrender is dangerous. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you become numb. It means you stay grounded. When you're no longer reactive to every offense, compliment, or crisis, you become a steady vessel for divine guidance. You can move with clarity. You can say no with peace. You can lead with precision. You'll stop apologizing for emotional outbursts. You won't need to walk back decisions made in chaos. And in that steadiness, your authority grows. People will try to provoke you. Life will test your limits. Your doubts will whisper. But if your emotions are anchored, your spirit stays clear. You'll know what's a distraction, what's divine, what's emotion, and what's intuition. Spiritual safety doesn't come from hiding. It comes from wisdom. From knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. From honoring your truths by not throwing them into the wind. From guarding your flame until it becomes fire. The chosen walk among many, but they live by higher laws. These untold truths aren't about being secretive. They're about being sacred. Let your life speak more than your lips. Let your energy speak louder than your words. And above all, let your connection to the divine shape every word you say and every secret you choose to protect. Because that's how you stay spiritually safe.